G'day, mate. What's your name?
I'm James Colley.
And what do you do, James?
I'm the head writer of Gruen and Question Everything on the ABC, and then I just scribble anything else they'll let me do.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Crowdworkcast. My name's Andrew Barnett. Thanks so much for joining me. Got a great episode for you this week. My guest, James Colley. I hadn't seen James in ages, and I got to say, I couldn't have enjoyed this chat more. He's just a really interesting, lovely, insightful guy. And he's one of those guys. I met James years ago when we were both doing stand up, and he was at uni, and he's one of the guys where you see his career progress, and because he's such a nice guy, it's just so nice to see how well he's done and how well he's doing. He's a guy who works super hard and super talented. This chat was really good. If you're a young comedy writer or a young comedian and you want to know how it's done, James has plenty of advice in this episode, so you're going to enjoy that. If you do want to check out more of James, you can find him on Instagram. He is at Jam Colley on Instagram. You can read his debut novel, which is called The Next Best Thing. That's available where all good books are sold. And if you want to see his writing come out of the words of other people, watch Gruen, The Gruen Transfer, or watch Question Everything, both on the ABC. And look him up on IMDb. He's always got interesting stuff on the go, so you'll find out all his body of work there. Other than that, if you're enjoying the podcast, please do like, subscribe, all that good sort of stuff. If there's someone you want me to talk to or something you'd like me to cover, please do reach out via social media. I'm at Andrew Barnett Comedy on all social media. Please do give me a follow over there. That actually really makes a difference. And if you'd like to see me do live comedy and you're in Brisbane, August 22nd, I'll be doing my solo show at the Good Chat Comedy Club. Tickets should be on sale for that now, so go to goodchatcomedy.com and check out those tickets. That's Thursday, August 22nd. Other than that, that's probably enough promoing things. This is a really good episode, so let's just get into it. It's my chat with James Colley.
I was thinking when I hit you up to come on this, I remember meeting you. I reckon when you were pretty much running the comedy at Sydney Uni.
Yes, yeah. Back in the day, I kind of inherited because everyone who was running at the time moved on to actual jobs, and I was the little one, so I was just left to run the factory. That's kind of gone now too, which is a real shame.
Yeah, I wondered about that. I didn't know. Sometimes with comedy, it's like you think something's gone, but then you're just not in that circle
Yeah,
anymore.
exactly. Yeah.
So I didn't, because I was like, I wonder if that is still going. But it was one of those ones where I'm like, I have no idea if it is or isn't.
I think I'm the same. Like it's probably like in another form, and I'm just too old a man.
Yeah.
I remember last time I went there, they told me I got the advice before going up on stage. They're like, just don't talk about how old you are. I'm like, that's fine. I'm not that. Like I'm a few years past you guys. It's not like I'm 60 wandering in here. And I stood on stage and I looked at those kids and I was to be like, oh God, I'm so old.
It's funny how quickly too that comes around. Like I've noticed a couple of times on stage, like because I'm 43, so I don't feel that old. But then some of the stuff I talk about, we had kids pretty young, so my kids are teenagers now.
Yeah.
So like some of the stuff I talk about, but I remember I went on stage a little while ago, and there was a couple of young girls there, and then I did something, and the way one of the girls reacted, I'm like, it was the first time I went, oh, you see me as like of your dad's generation.
Oh yeah.
Like, because
Okay.
they would have
Yeah.
been like 18, 19. And I'm like, oh man, that hurt. That hurt.
We get that a lot. Like we do a lot of with Gruen having young comics in and internship programs and like trying to get people their first kind of time in a studio and a bit of a job. And there are times when things are pitched that I realize like I came on this show as the young guy and it hasn't been that long and now I'm the old guy on there. And so there'll be things that are pitched that I don't understand. And then I also have this memory of like like Will and I at the desk working at a monologue and it just not coming together. Like just one of those that just needed a few more time. And we were just both head down, like staring at this script and like something's gonna change here. And our intern for that week went, this is so much fun. And then turned and literally skipped out of the studio. And I remember we looked at each other like, oh yeah, this is supposed to be fun.
yeah. This is, but I suppose that's the perspective of the person who's like, this is all new and it's fun and it's exciting, and
Yeah.
they're still plugged into the. It's fun to be creative and make stuff up with people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Whereas you two are both looking at the deadline as at a certain point, those cameras are going to
100%,
turn on,
yeah.
and something needs to be said, and we need to work out what that is.
There's so much of that when just because light entertainment moves so quickly, as you know, that like there's a certain point in there where, say, it's Monday afternoon, and there are certain things in the script that aren't working, and we'll be like, it's all right. We'll just sit on this for about 5 hours, and then 1 million people can watch it in a day. Like, oh my god!
It's the funny thing about those, like, because I suppose from that intern's point of view too, and when you first start in those jobs, what you picture it to be, and then your first experience, it is very exciting. It's very but it's very quick when you're in the process, when you got your head down. It's very easy to lose sight of how much fun it is and what you're actually doing.
And I think there's a bit of like that's part of the joy for us. Like what we get out of having them there really is like it's both like there's an element of it that's just you want to leave the industry in a nicer place. You want to have these books because like I remember when we were growing up, like there was the only time I ever got to do that was like sitting in for Good News Week on one of its various comebacks and like sitting on the panel. And they're like, okay, you can sit here while we run a rehearsal. We might ask questions. If you have anything, go on and say it. And they did the first question. I told some joke. I can't remember what it was. And then someone came over and was like, don't answer these, please. Like that was the end of the experience.
Wow.
I was like, okay, fine. But I think like a bit of like reminding yourself how lucky you are and how badly you wanted to be here as well. Like just not letting familiarity breed contempt, that kind of idea. But it's also just a bit of energy and a bit of joy and like people to excite you and who haven't, talked about it's Gruen, so haven't talked about toilet paper every year for 16 years,
Yeah, the fresh eyes can really sort of freshen that creative process up. It's interesting you said about so the comeback, like the various iterations of Good News Week. When I was in year 10, because I'm a bit older than you, when I was in year 10, I did work experience at the ABC, and one of the things that I went down and spent 2 days, like a day of the basic writing show day, rehearsal and everything, in the original Good News Week over at ABC. And it was because it was when Paul McDermott and Mikey Robbins were still doing breakfast on Triple J, I think, at that stage. So I'm dating myself now.
No,
it would have been, I reckon that 97 it would have been. And but I remember being that kid, like getting to sit in on the panel.
And that's what, like, that's a bit of the responsibility you feel as well, that like we all remember that first time you got to do that and you're like, I want to make this a nice time for you, like to make you feel welcome and also that you actually get to be involved. Because like so many of the, even for myself, like so many breaks in career-wise have just been someone being gracious enough to let me get involved when they didn't need to. Like my first jobs were always there. I was there to run the Twitter feed. I wasn't there as a writer. And, I'd just produce scripts and hope someone would look at them. And it would have been so easy to be like, fuck off, kid.
So this is interesting because I was wondering how that went from, like, you're obviously uni talent. What were you studying at Sydney Uni?
Oh my God. Physics and Australian literature.
Physics and Australian literature.
It was honestly, I came from Penrith. I'd been doing stand-up since I was like 15. And I was like, okay, I need to go into the city, so I may as well go to uni. And I tried to type in journalism into like they have that portal where you could search it. Now that degree, I believe, is called media and communications. I didn't know that at the time. I was just a kid. So I typed journalism in and nothing came up. And I was like, oh, well, I guess they don't teach that. I'll just do physics, I guess.
Physics and Australian literature is a beautiful combination too, because we've all dreamt of writing the great Australian physics novel.
Yes, exactly. I always think like if Trent Dalton decides to actually have a boy swallow the universe, I'm there.
So you go to uni, you're studying there. How? Because I think one time, and I feel a little guilty about this, but I remember you were running the comedy night. It was when it was at the Chippo.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I remember I'd popped in for something, and you came upstairs and just asked if I wanted to jump up at the end and do a quick set, and I did. And I said, oh yeah, I'll come down and do it. And I remember my opening line, because I remember it really well
I
as...
don't remember this at all, so this is terrifying for me.
No. So I remember my opening line was, I was excited because I knew the uni night was on and I hadn't been able to get down there. And I said, oh, it's great to get to come down and see the Sydney Uni comics before you all graduate and get jobs at the ABC.
Yeah, and it's true.
I remember making that joke, and then you guys, like you laugh, like you all laughed and stuff. But then, like within a couple of years, you sort of moved on. And I was like,
ABC.
oh, he's writing over at the ABC. I was like,
You
wow,
called it out.
Called it.
Well, that was like, I remember because I knew like I knew I wanted to do comedy, and I'd been doing comedy for years by the time I was going to uni. I was mostly picking Sydney because I saw it had a big comedy scene, because my degree didn't matter. Like I was going between looking at computer programming at UTS. I'm not good at that.
Yeah.
To physics, I was terrible at that. So like I knew my dad still thought I was going to military school, because like he's an Air Force man, and I had to have this chat with him, being like, Dad, I am a coward. It would be better for the country and for me to keep me out of the ranks. But the discussion was about what, like, I picked Sydney Uni because I knew of, this is a terrible reason to get in about $40,000 of debt, but like I knew about 4 comedy clubs in the area, so I was like, that's a good center place I could be.
Wow.
So I'm in the city during the day, so I can go there at night.
The most expensive open mic experience ever. That's crazy. So so do you still do much stand up? Do you get a chance?
Not really. I always tell the young comics on Question Everything that I've retired. That like I do like every so often, like I'll do guest spots and things like that. Like at the start of this year, I did a run at the Comedy Store just to like, because I had a little bit of go back and pay your dues. Like like I've been giving so much advice to young comics that every so often you have to be like, do I still know what I'm talking about or not? And it was not like, it went well. It was good to get that feeling again. But then I feel like to get it to the consistent level I'd want it at, it would require an amount of dedication and time that I just don't have right now.
Yep.
Like I don't have that burning desire to like do that specific form. And also like I have a 2.5-year-old, so getting out every night at about 8 p.m. is a real like mean trick to play on my wife.
But when you've got like a young family and that sort of stuff, and your your joke writing itch is being scratched.
Yes,
like
exactly.
You're getting that outlet. It's not like you're not getting the creative outlet. You're still outputting probably more jokes than most stand-ups are doing any given week. So
yeah. And there's a lot of like focusing on big projects I really like things like I did my first book this year, and like having things that you can really spend time crafting just excites me, because so much of what we do on television is of that week and then disappears. And I always had that problem. Like I usually do mostly political stuff in stand-up, which firstly I don't have that like 22-year-old anger anymore. It's really hard to give a shit now.
It's funny once you hit an age where you're less sure of, because at 22 you're so sure of this is the right way to do things, and then as you go on, you're this is actually pretty complicated, and it's hard to write a bit
15 years ago and it didn't really work.
It's hard to write a bit that's like, what we need is political nuance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not, you got to be like, political comedy sort of has to be a bit polemic, otherwise it's not interesting.
It's to get a fire in you. And even then, once you get to that stage, then you need to be talking to people who already agree with you for it to go well. And you're like, both of those sides I don't care for.
Yeah.
And so and everything I wanted to do was like just crafting something and really spending time on it. So I felt like I would love to do, like come back and do shows again or do something of the longer form. But to get that good, you need to invest your time to just get your feet back, like get just reps on stage. And I feel like I would be trying to cheat the game if I tried to go around that. And I felt like that's probably a bad way to use my time.
Yeah, I think though, like keeping one foot in the world, so you don't lose touch completely. Then it's always that option of going, you know what, now is time to work on this project.
And I love, like, there's nothing I love more for my ego than like once a year doing like a 10-minute guest spot on a friend's show and crushing it, and then be like, maybe I'm the best at this. Let's never test that. Let's just take this one off it. It's like if you took one ball and hit a 4 and you're like, well, I guess I'm Don Bradman. Bye, everyone.
Ego topped up.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm back into retirement. Thank you. Yeah, so you started. So you're at uni. How does and you're doing stand up? How does the writing sort of kick off? So you said you got hired mostly to because this would have been what years? What
Like
years
we're
would this
talking
been?
around about like first TV job would be 10 years ago this year, so it'd be 2014. So there was a little bit of gap before there where I'm like writing stuff for university shows or for like the uni paper. And you do these reviews, which are like big end of year shows, and we do monthly sketch shows and stuff. So like we're getting practice writing and
Yep.
producing like small scale but shows. And then from there, and I'm sure he comes up a lot because he's such a like godfather of Australian comedy. But Dan Illich brought me in to do Irrational Fear, and he was doing well. I say he brought me in. He was doing Irrational Fear, and I messaged him like he had done one episode of it. We had done a stand-up show that we were both on, and I was like, I really am interested in political comedy. Can I come along to this? And he was like, Oh, you can run the coffees. I was like, okay. And I sat in, and there was like this room that was like Dan and Mark Humphreys and a bunch of other comics all pitching jokes. And I was there to literally sit in the corner, take their coffee orders, come back, come in. And I'd pitch a few jokes. And then at the end of the first one, he was like, Oh, you're a comedy writer. No, you should come and be a part of this. And I thought, oh, that's really nice. And then I was a part of it for like 2 years, and he still had me running the coffees, and I'll never forgive him for that. But then when they got picked up by like there was a crowdfunding push, and they were doing some work with the Guardian, and I ended up like that was really the first step. That from there, that was the first time I had a job that was like I wasn't doing Cole's Night Fill and then trying to fit stand up around it. I actually had a job writing comedy, and that was the real first time I got to do that. And it was from there I had produced a few things that had gone what was considered viral at the time, and I think that's what got the attention of like the ABC were starting the weekly with Charlie Pickering for the first time, and they just wanted someone to run the Twitter feed. But I think the idea of it was to have like a secret writer slot, like one that like we don't have the money for a full writer, but we'll pay some young kid to be here and maybe pitch a joke or two.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was from there that I was like,
And it's interesting now looking at the way, because obviously then Twitter was newer, but it was also like it was that peak thing where TV, like live tweeting,
yeah,
things
we
was
really thought it
massive.
was important.
Yeah.
And like I feel like now like that same job doesn't exist because we realized it doesn't really like we do want like things to live online and to have like, but there's so much more now of like it took about a decade for us to realize that like it doesn't matter what type of rectangle you're looking at on, the content has to be good.
Yes.
Like, you want to see like the show on your phone. You don't want to see like someone just walking backstage and filming crap and
Well, it also seemed at that stage, and I think it was much more because TV was a bit more linear, that you sat down and watched things at the same time.
Yeah,
So
that's true. Everyone was
live
watching it.
tweeting, everyone would sit and interact with each
You're
other.
right. That's so weird to think of now that like
Yeah.
it just like we are still like maybe everyone's watched The Bear or something like that, or like there are 4 shows that everyone's watching one of that 4 at any time, but you don't talk about it that way anymore.
No,
Yeah.
it was because I remember Q&A was massive for
Yeah,
and probably
absolutely.
lasted longer because it still is sort of a time slot more program. But nowadays people just sort of the time slot doesn't really matter as much because they'll watch whatever whenever.
I know this is before my time, but there was a suggestion to have tweets on the screen for Gruen, and I just can't imagine anything worse now. Like to think of any show that would put it on now. Like I can understand with Q&A because there's a bit of like here's what the general public is thinking. It's like having the Word for elections or
Yeah.
whatever. But for any other show, like it's so hard to concentrate. And like you're already battling someone looking at their phone and looking at their laptop and whatever.
Exactly.
And then to add like just a rolling ticker of other people's opinions.
And then that also gets to the point too, once that's an established thing, then there's always someone who's going to go, I'm going to game this system, see if I can get
100%.
something crazy on the screen. And so then, it becomes sort of half disingenuous. But that's nothing will date a show now more
100%.
than if you look and go, oh, that's sort of sort of between 2014 and 2018.
Absolutely,
The scrolling Twitter.
And it's so like, and it was useful for me at the very least. Like it got me through the door. But it's it's a very strange area because you're also like you're not a writer, and I like this was like I had been in I had been in writers' rooms where we're all uni students, but like then for like that first season of the weekly, you're walking into a room of proper writers, and or that season it's like Kitty Flanagan and Tom Gleeson are in that room, and Charlie's there, and Jerry McCulloch, and a bunch of like incredibly like well established and respected comedy writers. And I remember Scott Abbott is one of the writers on the show and still is now, and he once gave me like after years later when I had like kind of grown into the role a bit, he gave me an impression of what I looked like pitching a joke, and it was like I was so scared coming into that room because it was a room of idols, and he was like, so basically you walk in, you go, I've just seen this thing. It doesn't matter. It's awful. I don't know why I'm bothering you. It doesn't. We don't forget it. But anyway, I'm going to tell you it. Here it is. But that sucks. So don't worry about it. Bye.
Nothing like the low self-esteem, slow pitch.
Exactly. You're really selling this to us.
They start going like, I don't know if my instincts are off because I thought that was pretty good, but he clearly hates it.
And it's so like when you're on the other side of that conversation now, you're like, I'm never mad at an intern for pitching a joke.
Because that's what we're all there for.
That's
and
what you're there.
I think you realise too, like early on, like when I first started at Fox, and I literally was audience warm up, and I'd text jokes to James Rochford for like, here's an idea for, I saw this, you might be able to use this for a segment, for his segment he had at the time. And then and I always felt like I was bothering, and then being on the other side when you're in that thing where we need to put a show to air, anyone throwing me an idea,
oh my god,
is a godsend. And I was just like, I can't believe I ever thought I was annoying anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's not a great idea, or if it's not something you can use, it takes no time to go, okay, we can't use that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much, like, I like to tell our young writers, like, no one gets more jokes shot down than me. Like, I will be throwing up more and be like, no, that's terrible, or dismissing ideas of my own. So it's not like I'm going to look at one of yours and be like, how dare you have suggested this?
Get out.
Yeah. Occasionally you get ones that you're like, you're way off, mate. Like,
yeah.
It's all like, I like those, like, because they're mistakes that I can imagine myself making. And like, I remember an intern pitching a joke that was about like, it was just a Harry Potter reference. I don't know it well, but it was like Will saying something about Slytherin. And I was like, you need to look at Will Anderson. He is a 50-year-old man. Can you believe that he is really up to date on the happenings of Slytherin? You're like, that's an adorable mistake, but it's not a punitive one. Like, I'd rather you offer it up.
But I think too, you can have an environment where people are willing to throw the ideas out there. Just even occasionally have a wild swing. Because I don't know, like some of the stuff I look back most fondly at when we were doing the shows at Fox is weird ideas that wouldn't have. Like one of the first things I ever got like for a whole show theme was the first year the rugby, like the Friday night show was on, we're sitting around, we had really nothing much to build the show around, and then I just noticed that the night the show was going to air was May 4th. So we were like, let's just do a Star Wars.
Yeah, why not?
So we had our Josh Reynolds was the guest, came on as Darth Vader, did the full entry and the helmet off. The professor was like full Yoda makeup. Like it was just, and it was one of those ones where I look back at it now. Actually, it might have even been the second year because I think I did the NRL store at that night. But it was like, it gave us something to hang the show around, and it just threw up like it was like so much fun. It's May 4th, Star Wars Day. And then we just started throwing it around, and it was.
That's like to have the freedom to do that kind of joke, like to be silly and like to do the like part of the joy of coming in this through the social media is realizing that like all your like quick puns or whatever, they're going to be made by the time you get to where they're going to be made. So what can you do that Twitter can't? And a lot of the time it's just bigger and dumber. Like one of my favorite jokes we ever got to do on the weekly was right at the start. It was the season we were doing in COVID. Like, so we were filming in Melbourne. It was locked down. I would be like driving alone down a 6-lane highway to go in and make this show. And we had the Matildas had just been announced that the World Cup would be here. And so that's the time frame we're talking about. And like Scott Morrison called them the Matildas and stuff like that. God. And we'll do a couple of jokes on that. And he goes, and Charlie goes like, "Congratulations, the Matildas!" And then he looks up here. Oh, no confetti? Wow, the budget cuts are that bad. That's such a shame. And whatever. And we moved on. And then it goes to the next story. And COVID spiking. Like, and he goes like, the news tells you that 100,000 people have died. And he goes, 100,000 dead, and then the confetti starts to fall. No.
That's that's great.
Like a show that like can take itself very seriously like that, doing something so dumb,
Yes,
like it just makes it so much more joyful.
I'm with you. I love that. Like, I think one of the things we always tried to do, and we loved, is you take the serious, you make the serious very silly, but then you treat the silly very serious.
Absolutely, yes.
And it's just such a great formula for comedy to for that to work. So how did you go from? So you start there as just as
So it's like a social media writer, I believe.
social
is my
media
title.
writer, and then how? So that's at the weekly.
Yes, yeah. So I'm signed there for the weekly, and then I pitch. So it's been a few weeks of the show, and I pitched a script that was, hold on to your side belly, 100-year anniversary of the Armenian genocide. And you're like, you know, well, as comedy shows
It's
love to do.
obscure. Like in terms of Australian knowledge around different things, like the Armenian genocide isn't up there with.
It's not exactly, and it's not, not everyone's doing it at the Comics Lounge. So,
Yeah.
but like, it was like an interesting story because it was like starting to be like there were whispers of the acknowledgement of it happening in Parliament, but it was still contentious. But the one person who was really promoting it hard was Kanye West. Because at the time he was with Kim Kardashian, who was Armenian. He did a concert, and he did this thing of like what was a concert there specifically to make this worldwide news. But then he Kanye'd out and just ran into the lake beside him, and then the story became Kanye's run into a lake.
Yep.
And we're like, that's a really fun journey. You start in something so serious, and you end in something so silly that Kanye's in a lake.
Kanye.
And so I wrote up this script, and it went really well. Like it was a real like, okay, this is ambitious to try, and because I presumed all the big stories were taken by actual writers, so I had to go out and like, this is ambitious to try. And then we got it ready, and it was going to be my first thing on air. We film on a Wednesday morning at that stage, and it was going to be my first thing on air. And then Tuesday night, the Last Week with John Oliver episode came out, like the last week, and he had done that exact story and almost clip for clip all the way through. He had all the same footage in, and you're like, that's a shame. But it became such a badge of honor of like the rest of the crew being like, oh, okay, this guy's onto something.
Yeah.
Because, our Big Brother show has like done this exact version of it. So then I was given a bit more rope to like, go, see what else you can produce, bring stuff in. And by the end of the season, I had a couple of things actually up on air. And you're like, that became like it was better that had not made it on air, but got the gravitas of John Oliver doing it better. And if my segment had gone up and people were like, that was pretty weird.
Yeah. It's like you've written an idea that John Oliver's then gone off and executed perfectly.
Yeah.
Proof of concept, guys. Look at this.
It's like never having to actually produce it, but it sounded great in the like green room before the show.
Oh, that's it. It's funny how those little things like that, like right place, right time, sort of, and being just plugged in and ready to obviously take advantage of that opportunity.
Absolutely. And then and to have a group around you generous enough to allow that to happen. Like the weekly was really good of like, if you cared about a topic, they'd let you go and champion it until you could produce something worthwhile. Like my first big piece on it was about Aboriginal incarceration, and it just so happened that like by the end of that year, the Adam Goods controversy had kicked off.
Yep.
And it was a really good time. Like it was just a time for that issue to be forefront. Like the Aboriginal rights and identification being like really like in the public consciousness, so we could actually bring this story that usually would be a very strange one for this kind of show to bring up. And so like that was both amazing. And then moving over to like Gruen, which I was also like, I kind of booked both those jobs at once. So I went from one and then came back for Gruen. And I was working with the head writer time with Sophie Brahms, and she was so generous in just like, there are so many times when people get in that position and they come in elbows out, like that. No one else, like I've got my spot, like no one else can come here. I do it. But she was so good at being like, oh no, great. She was like happy to have extra people in, would teach me like the bits that I fundamentally didn't get, like the taste part, like how do you know you're making a good argument? What should things look like? And just like would let me kind of sit beside her, and together we work on the show and fix the show. And it was just the kindest internship you could ever get from someone who had no business, like could have easily, it would have been fine if she was like, yeah, send me jokes when you want, you know, and that was the only interaction we had. But to have someone take that time to actually build you up and teach you not just how to do something, but why you're doing it.
Do you find, and this is something I've a theory I've got, that the people that like that are willing to help you are the people most secure in their own ability?
100%, yes, absolutely. Because you're like, if if you know you're not a fraud, like you're not scared of like sharing your secrets or whatever, like, and I feel like they build the better environments. Like we've all been in bad writers' rooms, and you can see like when a good one happens, you're like, yeah, it doesn't always have to be this way, you know. You can make it like the product's better, but also just when you want to go to work, it's a nicer way to
It's
live.
much easier. Yeah, it's much easier when you enjoy the process. Because it's sort of one of the things I focus on a lot at the moment is like you realize that how much of life it's mostly the process.
Yeah.
So if you're not enjoying that process of like, because the show goes to air for whatever, like for half an hour or whatever,
Yeah.
depending on the show you're working on. You can enjoy that 30 minutes that the show's going to air. But if you didn't enjoy the 45, 50 hours you spent working with the people to help get that to air, well then the half hour is not very long before then you've got to turn around and go, okay, now we've got to start from zero again.
Yeah, exactly. And just like to find those, and that's what I think like that silliness is so therapeutic for you as well. That like particularly when you're doing shows where you're staring down grim topics or you're doing heavy stuff, like to find those moments of like, I'm just going to inject some joy into this world, or we're going to make this more fun for everyone. And I think it's also just a nice bit of like when you start getting a bit of control and you can be a better manager, like you would hope, like that you can do that thing of like, I always say like maybe Gruen's got a love like writer's room full of lovely nerds, but it's harder to convince them to take the time off they need.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of like, oh, this has happened in my life, or I'm feeling unwell, but I'll work online or I'll work from home. Like, God, it's okay. Where like there's a bit of like, we're just working on a fun show that should be fun for you. Like I will feel the pressure of getting it to air, but that's my job to feel that pressure, make sure it gets over the line. For everyone else, we're trying to make you feel as free as possible to suggest crazy things or things that I will say like, well, that will never work. But I'm glad you suggested that, you know?
And you got to like you're at your best when you've had a time to recharge or creatively
Exactly.
recharge. Like if you're distracted and trying to do 7 things at once, then you're not as good for the show. So take the time you need, and then we'll get more out of you that way.
We used to have this thing in the weekly that we instituted for. They may still do it, but it was kind of it was a writers only meeting, and the idea of it was like players only meetings you get when a team's in crisis or something.
Yeah.
But the idea was to bring Charlie in a room and he gets to just be a comedian. Because every other aspect of the show, he has to be part journalist, part executive producer, you know, and you have other people involved who are worried about practicalities and time frame and the graphics budget and all of these things. And to just have in this room, practicality doesn't exist. Go and find the best joke, go and do whatever you can do, and then we will work it out afterwards. Like if we have to compromise on one of these things or do it in a shoddier way or do it in an ABC way, like we can do that. But let's let the dream live in one room.
That's such a smart way to work too, and understanding that, especially for Charlie, like he at heart, like the reason he wanted to do those shows is because he's a comedian.
He's
He
a
wants to get
comedian, and he's
jokes
a
out.
very good comedy writer. Like, and it's just that like no one can play all 5 roles at once. Like you can't do all of these things all of the time. You have to section it off yourself. But there are times when like the rubber has to hit the road and it has to be practical and what can we fix now and what can we change. But that's not that stage. So like dream a little.
It's funny when one of the things that when we were at Fox, because we very small team, like working on especially the Friday night show. So it's basically written by me, James. We had a producer we had, especially that first year and a bit, the producer we had was a really good, like, he would never say he's a comedy writer, but he threw as many ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sort of stuff. But and then we just generally maybe have one other helping us, like depending who we could get in to help with it. But then because James, like he was EP of the show, and he knew like he'd literally sit on the tools and do rough cuts and stuff before we'd send it to the editor, and so he could do it all from cradle to grave. And but there was a point where people would come to him, like we'd be, sort of half an hour before taping. Him and I'd be going through script, but people would come to him with bullshit stuff that he didn't need to worry about that then. And the producer was pretty good at intercepting it, but I remember quite a few times yelling at our floor manager because he'd come in and go, boys, not much audience. That audience don't seem very good. And I remember, get the fuck out. We don't know, like, he's trying to get into performance mode. He's now gone from this, like that understanding of, okay, now you just need an hour to get into the performance headspace.
Absolutely.
To go from writer, to go from producer, to go into that performance. Right now it's time to, jazz hands, let's turn it on.
Yeah, exactly.
But this floor manager just used to constantly just say the wrong thing. And to his credit, he was a lovely bloke, and he was a guy who I could yell at him, like, get the fuck out of here. Mate, I don't want that bullshit coming in here. And he'd just put his hand up and go. And then he'd come up to you later, everything was water off a duck's back to him.
Absolutely.
So he was that kind of guy. You could be short with him. Like, you obviously can't do that with everyone, and I wouldn't if I thought that it was going to upset him permanently.
Absolutely.
But he was just one of those guys, like, geez, that was a bit weird, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But yeah,
it's so interesting. There's so many things that just change. And you're right that, like, it's amazing that one of the great and terrible parts of how this job works is that every decision comes through you. So you have we had a bit, this is again the silly coming out, but like we had a bit where there's a brand of dog food that say, they open their ads with, you might know us as the brand that eats its own dog food. And we're like, amazing. That's a whole Gruen monologue. Thank you. And so of course we wanted Will to eat dog food.
Yep.
But like for that to happen, like you write down a script and like it just says prop Will pulls out some dog food and eats it, and then that triggers a series of emails between me and an art department, and it's about, what should the dog food look like? What should it be actually made out of? Is he able to eat it on stage? What should it be? What type of bowl do we want? And then like we have the joke like, it's ABC. It'll be funny if he stole Bluey's bowl. We don't just reference it. It's just clearly Bluey's bowl. You're like, okay, but should it look like the bowl that they use in the cartoon, or should it say Bluey? But like whatever it is, it just means there is a conversation between 8 people for multiple days for any little decision like that you have to make. And part of your job is to protect them from that. Like, just don't give them decision fatigue.
And it's funny when you go back and forth 3 or 4 times, like you've got an email chain all about what kind of bowl someone's going to pretend to eat dog food out of.
It's so fun.
And you go, this job is like...
I remember my first time I ever got to do something like that was, it was like I had written in a script, we're talking about coal seam gas, like this was for Dan Illich's Irrational Fear. And we're talking about like, there was a law proposal at the time, it's a very long time ago, so this might not be right anymore, but like, it meant that people searching for like gas companies could enter your property without permission to drill. And I was trying to get a visual example of that. So the idea was a truck breaks through a fence, and then a farmer comes out, and he's like, God damn it, throws his hat down, something like that. And then we were doing that shoot, and I got driven out on set because I was playing the farmer, and I didn't realize that like the farmer who actually ran this job set a little fire, got up at 5 a.m., made a fence for us, and then sat around and was going to drive through his own fence. And so I'm like, oh my God, I wrote a joke that took 2 seconds for me to think of, and it has ruined your day. And then he was driving the tractor that went through the fence. He burst it through the fence. I ran on, and I missed my cue.
Oh.
I'm like, all right, we're going to have to cut around.
Mate, I need you to build the fence again. Everyone back to 1. Oh man, I remember one time it's just on the missing cues and stuff. We had a when we were doing the cricket show, we had Ed Cowan on, but I forget what it was. It was some short leg fielding thing, and he basically is just hitting the ball as hard as he can at us. And I went first, and then James was second, and just through sheer coincidence, it hit him clean in the nuts. Like just perfect. Like you couldn't ask for anything better.
Scripted,
From
yeah.
low rent, just good, just dumb comedy, and the cameraman missed the shot. So then we had to reset up as though we've gone to a close up and throw a cricket ball multiple times into his crotch. I've never seen anyone so justifiably fuming at a because and the thing was with the camos we had these great camos, but a lot of them they do some studio, but a lot of them in this particular camo he was a live sport camo. He was just in the studio that night. I'm like the one guy that
Yeah,
we got
this
told,
is your-
mate, this guy, he's a legend with the live sport. Missed it completely. Like
so
of all the
funny.
blokes to miss it, it was you.
And it's like great, like I feel like the comedy can get like particularly in this kind of like quick turnaround comedy can get in trouble when it tries to be too tight and too perfect and everything.
Yep.
Like tiny accidents, things messing up, that's what makes shows like this. Like I always go to like Inside the NBA, be like one of the perfect examples of how do you do a fun sports show.
Yes.
And it's because they just give space to, do you know what? Shaq wants to come back and the game's boring, so he wants to eat a very hot chip. You know? And you just get like, this is going to be really fun because you've given them some space to play.
Yeah, you've hired these guys for their personalities.
Yeah, exactly.
So let their personalities shine.
There is a bit of like I can fall into that trap when we're writing Gruen. It's something I have to remind myself constantly, which is like we have a secret agent on the desk. We happen to have one of Australia's best comedians just sitting there. Sometimes you can just get out of their way, you know, like you just be like, all right, we're going to throw up this thing. You'll know what to do.
Yeah, and that is the having that. It's funny because one of the things that I had to adjust to was when writing jokes and you're asking like ex-footy player or ex-sportsman who aren't performers to execute something is like dialing your expectations around what they're going to be capable of. And that was when you'd the great thing about like Nathan Highmarsh when we had him on the year we had him on the panel with us, he is an astonishingly good performer.
So good, yeah. No business being that good at it.
Yeah, I know he can cry on cue, which is amazing. I don't know how he does it, but yeah, he's genuinely a decent actor. So you could put him in there, and he just has this timing. But he's one of these just no confidence in his own performance or whatever. But he's just he's funny. One of the guys I absolutely loved working with the most because he just go with it. He never really had any ego about saying, "Oh, I don't want to do that." Or the one time, talk about those writing, like being silly when you're in a writer's room. So we'd hit a brick wall this day and we were mucking around, and so we rang Hindy because we were talking about how he doesn't say no. And so we rang Hindy and I actually videoed it, and James rings him and he goes, "Mate, just got this idea for a sketch." He goes, "Oh yeah, what is it?" And he goes, "Mate, we just need you to," I forget how we set up the premise that we justified it, but I don't think we even justified it particularly. He goes, "I need you to, look, I need to change you. I just need you in a nappy." He goes, "We'll just sit you up on the desk and I'll change your nappy. They're just there on TV." And he's here. Oh, all right. Oh, I don't know. We are like laughing. And then we ring him back 5 minutes later and he goes, "Oh my God, thank you for letting me off." He goes, I'm pacing the house going, "How do I get out of it? How do I tell them I can't do this?"
Oh, that's so funny.
We were going to change him live. And he just went, "Okay,
Well,
if you think it's
show."
funny." But I think too, that's what makes for really like good product. You talk about in the right mood in a writer's room is like there can be competitive, like I want to outdo people with jokes, or there can be what's best. If everyone's there going, what's going to make the best product? And
what amuses us, what would we love to see? Like, you just remind me of like seeing those relationships happen where you get like really distinct who's on board and who isn't. And I did, for a couple of years, I wrote the arias.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they had like a big part of the arias is they like the way their process works is they'll be like, okay, it's this, you're doing this award, like the heavy metal album of the year, whatever.
Yep.
And here are the people we have booked. And they are very big on event-based, like moment-based. There was moment-based television. So I was like, okay, we've booked, and it's always this person who makes sense and this person who doesn't. So it's like rock album. This is a real example where it was like rock or heavy rock album of the year, and it's like, and we've got Peking Duck perform with aggro.
With aggro.
Like, all right, so your job is write a sketch that both of these people can perform in.
Oh,
And like,
what is the Venn diagram where they cross
oh
over?
my god, I would recommend anyone go and look that up and see how it went. But there are ones that like there are people who you would hand those scripts to who would be and whatever, and I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you'd have one like, I remember I will forever love the Veronicas because I handed them a script and they're like, oh yeah, we looked at this beforehand. We love this. We've been rehearsing. It's so fun. And we're like, that's so like just that little bit of like, no, I care and I want to do a good job and I don't feel like I'm being forced at gunpoint to do this. That helps so much.
Because it's funny because that those award shows you'd expect like we're all got into this because it's show business.
Yeah. And we know
we're putting on a show.
It's a bit on the nose sometimes. I still remember my favorite joke that we could never do for any because we did myself and one of my writing partners, Beck Shaw. We did this quite a bit of like writing award shows for a few years, and we did. I want to say the A League. Yeah, it was the A League award, like end of year awards, and. At the time, David Gallup was the head, like was the president, and I remember Beck writing a joke. They were like, "There's no way, like it's when you're introducing the president, there's no jokes. You just say like, and now the president's going to speak." But she wrote, he's the man with a horse's name but a football brain, David Gallup. There's no way they're ever putting that to air. It's so stupid that I love it.
That's so good. David Gallup, yeah.
Just that low effort. I love those kinds of like...
Yeah, just a weird intro that people aren't... Because the other thing is sometimes like a lot of people aren't really listening that carefully to the intro anyway.
And
but the person who does catch is going, what? Did they just say?
There was one that... I remember Scott Ockerman wrote this and it was for like the Emmys. And it's... She has the name of a carnival ride. He has the name of a forest. It's Anna Ferris Wheel and Chris Pine Tree. It's so low effort, and I love it.
Oh, I love. Yeah, I think too. That's like that sort of stuff. I especially love at those events that do take themselves a little seriously.
Exactly. Just adding a bit of we know how dumb this is too.
Yeah, guys, we're giving out awards to people who are pretty well rewarded in their careers.
There are eskies full of beer in the aisles. And it's also like when it takes itself seriously, it's so boring. It's so bad to watch. It goes on for so long. When they're fun, they're really fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I've quite liked the Logies for the last couple of years. I thought they've done a good job making them fun for what is a painful night.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like, I think that bit of sense of humor. I think when a couple of years ago, when they started getting Tony Martin doing
great,
just
so fun.
Just that willingness. Whoever made that decision is go, okay, we need to open ourselves up to a bit of like you're taking a risk there because you know he's gonna like there's gonna be some stuff he says it's a bit undercutting and a bit
exactly. And I think that's nice though because like whenever we try and do the Oscars or we try and be as serious as Americans, it doesn't fit us. We're not that earnest to people. Like
100%.
It feels more fun to just be like, this is how we actually feel about this.
Man, I tell you, when a few years ago we wrote some stuff for Sam Thaiday was presenting at
I'm his personal biographer.
Really?
I wrote Sam Thaday's biography.
Really? That's fantastic. I don't know if he ever talked to you about the time he sort of did stand up at the Dally M's.
He did not.
He was presenting and he had some, and so they asked us to write some jokes for him, and so we wrote this stuff for him. But it was very much like, just say it like this.
Yeah.
And we had the script and we went down for rehearsal, and he was so. It was a classic, someone that's never really done stand up or whatever. That confidence beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was that classic thing of
Young and Crush.
He was like, yeah, boys, sweet. Yeah, no, that'll be sweet. It'll be sweet. But like, just, and we'd scripted it out. We had it, we could get it in the audio. No, I'll get the vibe. I'll do. And he sort of, couple of bits he riffed or he just, and it just fell. And I was like, oh man, I was so, and it was straight away, like, it was one of those things like people were like, oh man, did you see Sam Thorday at the, like, geez, a couple of the things didn't hit. And it was like, it's like, because it's a like, and in fairness to Sam, that's a tough room.
It's a tough room for a professional comic, and like when they will judge in 15 seconds whether you can do this or not.
But it was because on that night they're like, oh, we've got tickets for you. So you want to go? I'm like, no. We literally set Sam up with everything he needed, and then we left, and I think we went to the pub nearby, and I think we watched part of it from there.
We still had. I remember one of the first gigs I booked when I was down in Melbourne was writing the monologue for the Great Debate, like for the comedy debate, and Waleed was hosting, and so I still remember this because we met up one night to like he had one night free after the project to meet up, and the only place nearby at the time where you could like sit and have a coffee was this like 50s diner. So like we were sitting there drinking like black coffees like a detective movie, and, and he's telling me like his views on it was like social media was the topic of the debate, and there was someone like dancing to the Monster Mash beside our table. Like we don't need this, but and then he went and did the thing, and he did fine, but he did fine as like a presenter trying to do comedy. So there would often be times where like he would pause halfway through like a punchline. Like just say this and then just think about it for a second and then continue on. And you're like, fine as a presenter, like as a comedian, your heart's breaking a little and you're like,
that's the hard thing to watch stuff you wrote that can work. Who's the best to work with in terms of if you write, like obviously Will's probably top of the tree. Is there anyone we wouldn't expect that you've written for that you go, oh, their executions?
That's a good question. Who's very good at that? I was surprised how good Briggs was.
Yeah.
I think like for just he can hit a line, he's funny. Like and like since then he's got better comedy writing credits than I have, so he's doing all right. And like Tony Armstrong's similar like that. That he's just game for anything that makes fun of him. He's fine to do.
Yep.
I thought he was very good for that. I'm just trying to think who else was unusual but really game. Do you know? I think we had for a sketch we had John Wood. And it was a real like the sketch was mean to him, and he was like, because the point of it was when Tom was running for his gold logie, and the idea was he had pulled a bunch of gold logie people in, and like he was trying to get all their advice on how to win. And John Wood was there, but he was not there as a gold logie winner. He was just like more Tom's PA that he doesn't respect. And he comes to him, I think you should do it. Shut up, John. I want to like large cap and whatever.
Yeah.
And how up for it he was there.
That's fantastic.
I'm like, that's really nice. Like anyone who will do that, like, because there are times when you send in these bits that you're like, I'm nervous sending this to you. Do you know, again, like Gleason is a very good example of this, that we did a bit at the end of like the first episode of Gruen this season, which is like Hamish and Andy are currently doing Hubble ads. Hamish is in a big box.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, we should do the iView version of that. Made this big box up. Asked Tom if he would be in it. And like, we need you in a big box to read these lines and do a little dance. Will you do that for us? He's like, yeah. You're like, you don't need to do this.
Yeah.
There is no reason you should, but it's very nice that you do.
He strikes me as someone, like, he's obviously incredible comedian, but strikes me as someone too who, if he thinks something's funny, happy to go with it.
100%. Yeah. Just believes the joke and backs it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is kind of, that's the dream of the kind of people you want to write for.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we're getting close to time here, but what I want to ask you is, like, so you've got this great path through TV writing. So before we go, what advice for if there's anyone out there who goes, I'd love to learn how to get into that TV space, but what is the process? So a Gruen process for the week, for what is the process of how that week unfolds in terms of the writers?
How we put Gruen together. So on Wednesday, so like show goes to we film on Tuesdays.
Yep.
So Wednesday at about 11 midday, we are in our first meeting for the next week. And so we'll look at like some ads that are.
So it's good that you get to enjoy.
Yeah,
You just get to really
exactly,
sit back and enjoy the work you did.
There are times in that meeting where I haven't drunk a thing and I feel so hungover that you're just.
It's funny you should. That was exactly. I remember that was exactly how it was described to me after when we do the Friday show, like
Yeah.
Friday night show. Is like our producers. He goes every Saturday. He goes, I feel like I'm hungover.
100, and you're just moving slowly. You're like look terrible, whatever. And then so we do that on Wednesdays, and then I will take the script from there with our eyes on on Wednesday afternoon, Thursday, and we write the script. And where this season, particularly more than others, we're kind of constantly updating things. Like a new ad has come out from Woolworths or whatever, and we try and slot it in somewhere. And then on Friday morning, we have our first script read. And it's a very rough shape, but it's just to get into the weekend to get the panelists aware of what topics we're considering so they can just have it in the back of their mind and continue working. And from there, we're like, things like the graphics and the like clips that might be the end of the show or different segments in that we're making have to start production because they're going to take time to work. So there are bits of the script that are already coming together that will stay throughout the whole run. You're trying to get the general structure together and like a bit of the monologue if you have it. Then on Monday is rubber hits the road. Like you come in and we do a read halfway through the day that is with the clips. It's called a real read, and what we're doing is we're looking at everything that will be in the show, and it's really like kind of the most humiliating read of my week every time because like there's no way to beat this. There's no way, like 10 years now, there's no way to get around it. Some things will work really well until you see them and you're immediately like, I've wasted everyone's time with this.
Yep.
And it's one of those rooms where you're like, there are 20 people in the room from like producers and graphics department and everything like that, and they're all watching this together and they all know it's not working either. And so like it's just a little bit of public humiliation. That's fine. And then from there, like we'll do notes on that script, and then I'll take it into that afternoon and just work it with the team of writers until we have something that we feel confident to rehearse the next day. Then we come in on Tuesday and we just run the show again and again and again, and we fine tune and we change things and we edit the script. And then we have the panel come in and we take all of the fun bits out of the script, like so they don't know what jokes are coming.
Yep.
We want their reactions to be real.
You want natural.
Exactly. And so then like they see what they have to speak to. Like, okay, we're going to be playing the Woolworths ad, so we're going to show you the Woolworths ad. We're going to tell you what question we'll ask, but you don't know anything else that we're going to put in there. And then we do another rehearsal and then run the show. We record the show. It gets edited overnight. So after the show, we do what's called a paper edit. So like we sit and be like, I like this bit. Let's get rid of this bit. And then the show gets edited overnight, and they continue like their sound mixing while we're in the room to do the next week of shows.
Bloody hell.
So it's that kind of like very sharp turnaround where at the end of it, we're in like so we're shooting episode 10 on Tuesday, and that's the end of the season. And we play a game at the rap party, which is I'm the worst at, and it's called What Was on the Show This Year. And so we'll be like, all right, episode 2, what did we talk about? And I have no idea. I will have written every one. I have no idea what has happened because it just has to just go straight out of your brain, and you're focusing on the next part.
That I think is the thing that it's hard to appreciate unless you've done it, is how quickly the victory is put into air, how quickly that's gone, and the next thing, all right, we're on.
And there's a little bit of like something I try and instill in young writers is that there are going to be days where you show up and you don't feel like writing comedy. Like you're going to have bits of like, I'm hungover, I got in a fight with my partner, I just don't feel like it. And you kind of have to do, like I always say, like there are days that my brother-in-law doesn't feel like driving his truck, but he can't be like, but like there are days like you just show up and you put together, like you might not feel the funniest you have been, but you know where a joke belongs or like how a script should come together. So do all that other stuff. And then tomorrow, if you're feeling better, you might improve a joke, or you'll be amazed at how you get into the rhythm. And then all of a sudden the rest of the world starts to fade away and you start to hit your stride again. So there's a bit of like just showing up and getting behind the mule and plowing. Like, there's a little bit of that. Was a terrible way to word that, but
you're 100% right. Like you just, okay, this is
just go to work.
Yeah, go to work. Some days it doesn't feel like work, some days it will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like it's okay as well to acknowledge that, like, because we get to play, because we get to show up and have fun every day, it's very easy to convince yourself you aren't working. You have that old thing of like, do what you love and you won't work a day in your life. It's a fucking lie.
Yeah.
Like there are days that are absolutely work, but go do the work. And how lucky are you that not every day feels like this, but also that your bad days are still days where you're feeling bad because you're not sure you get to write as funny a joke as you would like to, you know? Like it's a good bad day to have.
That's such a good perspective to have on all that stuff. Now, what advice would you give to someone who's like getting out there? Because I think, and I'm particularly interested in like learning to write for a voice that's not yours.
Yes.
Because that's the key to the writer's room. Because we all like especially stand-ups. Like you get the first thing you get used to is being funny in your voice.
Yes.
Whether it's around your mates or whatever. What is the key to learning that? Learning someone else's voice or learning how to pitch a different sensibility?
That's a very interesting question, I think, because you're right. That is like part of the hardest. Like, so something I tell our like writers when they come in is that if you're in this door, I presume you're funny. I'm not worried about how you write a joke. I'm worried about how you form bits of the show. Like, I'm here to teach you how you write a screenplay, essentially, not how you write a joke.
Yep.
Like, there might be little bits of like little tweaks and like little technique things that I can teach you just from experience, but it's mostly about like the rhythm, the music of a show is so much more important than necessarily the punchline. That like if you can see that the way our bits work is we want a straightforward introduction that leads into this. We need to give them this little bit of information and a joke here and then a question. Let's say that that's our format. Learning the rhythms of those things. So what you have written feels like the show. Like that helps so much more than necessarily having the biggest clanger jokes. Because there's often times when like someone will have a really good joke or something really funny that we could do, but it doesn't serve the whole show. Or like it takes too long to wander down this path and we actually need them to focus on this other element. And so that's a bit of like the whole show vision part of it that helps out, just guiding what you're going to do and the kind of joke you're going to write. And then I think for writing in someone else's voice in general, that's just something that I like have always naturally liked. Like my problem is when I'm on shows for a long time, getting their voice out of my head. I mean, like, and it's fine this, but like when like you know when you, I was doing the 1% Club for a couple of years, and being in a writer's room with Jim Jeffries, he's so funny and so talented, but then his voice is so addictive to have in your head when you're walking around. And it's like you just can't operate your life with someone else's voice in your head like that. But I think it's part of like watch a show and feel what you think the rhythm of their comedy is, because I think that's just a good writing challenge to have in general.
Yep.
We do sometimes for like Question Everything. We have like go watch a show and then like watch a couple so you can see how it goes, and then write what you think the answer you would answer each question to be. But that teaches me what your comedy would be. Like you're then showing me how you would do as a guest or a panelist. I want to see like some of the things that we often get at Gruen is people send in like, here's an ad that I think is interesting, or here's why and what I want to pick apart. And I find that like more like I can teach you the technique parts of getting behind someone else, but like I think it's about like showing out how you think and like what observation do you make, what do you find interesting. And my a nice rule I like to have when I'm building writers' rooms is there's and this is advice that was given to me, but it was pick someone in the room who is not necessarily a comedy writer, but you love their brain. That like they just think in such an interesting way, and that you want that as part of your mix, because you like it's almost like building a football team. You know, you have like, here are our specialists who can just drive it forward. Here are these people who can finesse certain things in certain ways. It's just like building a room like that. And so the advice I give mostly to people who are interested in getting there is show me something and like produce something. It doesn't matter if it's a blog entry, a video. It's something that comics now are very good at, because you know it's filming your set and stuff has become so much more of a thing. They're sometimes too good at it, but there's like getting like a lot of that stuff on, just so I can see, show me how your brain works, show me what you find interesting and what sounds like you. We'll then teach you to get in someone else's voice. We'll teach you like how to like what does fit, how he doesn't seem like a Harry Potter fan, so let's leave those jokes aside and things like that. But the hardest part I always say to comics is I might love your set, I might think you're such a funny comedy writer, but I need to be in a room with producers, and I need two things there. I need to be able to show them like who you are, explain to them, like I can't just say I saw someone Tuesday night who was super funny, bring them in on the show. And the other part is show them you can turn up to work. And so like that's a real like, and it's so much of comics. Like there are super super funny people that you're like, I don't know if I could get you in here 3 days a week.
Can't get the. I say sometimes they can't get the revs to the wheels.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the engine revs, but
And you're like, and that you would be fine to be locked in a room with for hours on end and stuff like that. So like, those are the bits that when people come to me and they say like there's a misconception, I think, at least for the shows I work on, that people believe in this country you need spec scripts. In the States, much more. Like you need to like have your here are what my monologue jokes would be, here are my segments and stuff. Here we kind of like, particularly when you're coming in, we're not bringing you in because you think you're the missing ingredient to take this show to win 100 Logies or whatever. It's because we want to teach you and we want to like bring you up so you get experience in this area. So show me how much you care. Like show me like work that you've done, what you care about and what you produce. Like I would honestly rather read someone's, here's my short film script, because it gives me the idea of how you format your ideas, what kind of jokes you like and how you put that together, than necessarily a cover letter showing how educated you are, you know, or like, here are my list of degrees or whatever. I'm like, I have degrees, I don't fucking use them.
Hey, look at this person. They've got literature and physics.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring them in. Mate, we are getting to time, but before we go, I did want to ask you, like, you're obviously books as well. There's plenty of, you've got a million projects always on the go. So 5 years time, what if everything breaks perfectly James Colley's way?
Yeah.
What's it look like? What are you working on? What sort of stuff may you have done in that period?
So I have really loved. So I just released this year my first book, The Next Big Thing, and it was one of those things where I wasn't sure about the process. Like I had attempted and abandoned books before, and this was the time where I really fell in love with the process. Like
Didn't you write a satirical?
I did like a satirical essay collection once upon a time, and I did Sam Thaine's biography, and those were my two pillars. And
This is your first where
like
you're just
novel, like a first bit of fiction, and first thing that is not political satire, because so much of what I wrote is like trying to be sharp, biting satire, and this is a bit warmer and gentler. And I really loved it, and I loved taking that time to be able to work on and craft things. I've worked on a couple of narrative shows now where like they will send you script notes, and I'm like, okay, I'll have these back to you this hour. And like, no, you have 4 weeks. Like, what?
let this evolve.
So I think like I've really loved that process, and I've been working with my wife on some various projects with her. And it's nice to know that that can happen. Like that
That's fantastic.
We had one day where we weren't sure would we be a good writing team, and then we realized at the end of the day we had this like quite honest conversation, being like, I don't know if that's working. I think the problem is that we're being too polite to each other. But I know you're a good writer. You know I'm a good writer. We can say what we want to each other. And my wife's like, great. No, I think you're exactly right. I fucking hate your idea.
But I think that's good that you can recognize in that relationship, okay, this is a different dynamic to our married
100%.
relationship, raising the kid, whatever. But in there, we've got that one dynamic. In this, you got to go into it as like, okay, we're both writers. We've both been told our ideas are shit before. We're not gonna,
exactly.
just because it's coming from this person.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the respect to treat you as a professional, as I would with anyone else in this room. I'm not going to try and do, like, don't be a dick to them, but hopefully you're not a dick to any of you
exactly.
co-writers.
Yeah, you're not going to yell at anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
that's I think working with her and building like building longer form things, like things that something I really liked about this was it was the first time that it's now been out for 6-8 months, and I'm getting people reading it for the first time or reading it for the 5th time or stuff like. And it's just really nice to have something that lasts a bit longer, that's been crafted a bit more.
I was going to ask that. Is that something that, because obviously the ethereal nature of weekly television is like people might watch it a couple of times on iView or go, oh, remember their favourite episode or whatever, but it is very much
it's gone.
Whereas a novel that's just there. That's going to be in libraries. That's going to be wherever, and it's going to exist forever.
It was very stressful for me because I'm just so not used to that, and it was the first thing that I was really out the front of. Like I'm not I don't tend to like. Part of the reason why I went away from stand up is like I'm not super comfortable in that space. It was just the easiest way to get my writing out. If I would just stand there and say it. And this was the first time that I had to then put myself right in the spotlight again under my name, not hiding behind. I made a good decade hiding behind another comedian to go out and tell my jokes, and so it was like just stepping out myself like that was interesting and a bit stressful. And it wasn't until when you're the way you write in book, like you do like a couple of big drafts run through, and then you're basically doing edits on spot fires. They'll be like, oh, this bit in chapter 7 doesn't work, or these two things are a bit conflicting, or whatever. And you do that for months. And then right at the end on the final run through, I decided to take a day and sit and read my book. And I liked it. And I thought
nice.
I was so proud of that feeling of getting to the end and being like, it's so weird to say this, but I'm not embarrassed this is going out into the world. I'm willing to stand behind this and for as long as I need to and say, I'm proud of this book. I think for a first attempt, I feel this is a good first attempt and I want to build on that. Like it's not the only one I have in me, and I'm excited about taking on that bit of journey. So I found that really interesting and like learning to be proud.
And I don't know. My instinct would be too with that, like because it is going to be around longer. That you being proud of it is almost a bit more important. Like
Yes.
because if there's a couple of jokes that you're like, oh, this isn't my best work
Exactly.
in
There
a
are
show,
times in Gruner
they're
you're
gone.
just like, I missed it, like didn't quite do, or you realize the next day, like, that should have been the line or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And there'll be things of that in the book as well, but that hopefully shows your like growth as an artist. Like,
Yeah.
that you look back things you're like, yeah. And you're like, well, that's good. Make your next one better.
Oh, mate, this has been an absolute pleasure. Plug whatever you want to plug. Where can people find you online? And obviously go buy the book.
Yeah, buy the next big thing from all good bookstores, and check out Gruen on ABC iView and Question Everything coming to the ABC soon.
Excellent. Mate, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a
Cheers.
pleasure.